Nissan.
Sucks.
BMW.
Better.
Nissan.
BMW.
Nissan. Nissan.
Sucks. It really, really sucks.
Nissan.
Sucks.
If you're like us, you have a lot of very biased, unvalidated opinions about car manufacturers, and that's why you've turned to the internet to validate your opinions.
So we're here to bring you the hard-hitting journalism and objective science on the different brands across the world.
You only see this in our video, no one else.
Definitely never seen this trend across the internet. Well, let's get right into it. I mean, we can start with our categories here. So at the very top, we got the S tier. We got Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky.
And if you don't get that reference, you need to go watch all Fast and Furious movies immediately.
Coming up, sort of middle of the road, good, but above average. That's about all we can say. Brent Rambo approved. Strong middle tier, great value brand, mac and cheese.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good, it's not bad. Would you buy something else if you could? Sure, but it's nothing to complain about.
Falling slightly below average. I mean, we've got the Craigslist special. It runs and drives.
Here, there's not really anything particularly standing out. It's slightly below average, but you're not going to be hating your life driving this every day.
And strong end here with Bobby Bolivia's finest quality used cars and petting zoo.
This is the absolute worst.
Here? No, what is this? You said half a car, not half a piece of crap.
Your first enchilada of freedom awaits underneath one of those.
So we're gonna reserve this blue tier for manufacturers that they kind of stand alone for obvious reasons. That's our strong independent manufacturer that don't need no funding.
Right, so these are cars that don't sell a lot because they're either really cool or really expensive or one-ofs. They might be nice, but it's not something that's really competing with Toyota or Honda every day.
Exactly. All right, let's get into it. First off, we got Fiat. How do you feel about Fiat?
Fiat might be, in my view, one of the most complicated brands on this list as far as what they've been known as over the years. They've been around a really long time. I think for me, Abarth exists, so that's most of my opinion about Fiat. So I would probably give them somewhere in the great value to Rambo approved. I don't think they're the best thing on the list, but they are pretty good.
Yeah, I would come up with some negative things to say, but I've been losing to the Fiata recently at autocross events, so I'm going to have to put them in Brent Rambo approved as well. So let's move on to a very closely related company, Alfa Romeo. Jeremy Clarkson said it best, if you haven't owned an Alfa Romeo, maybe you're not really an enthusiast. I guess I'm not really an enthusiast.
Yeah,
they're fine. They're
I haven't
cool.
owned an Alfa. Pretty much my opinion of them is very heavily shaped by the car person dogma of Alfa is the greatest thing that ever occurred. But I do know that they have a terrible reliability factor. So for that, I definitely have to dock them a little bit. I can't bring myself to say that an Alfa belongs in the Brunson Drives category.
No.
So I'm leaning definitely more great value, Brent Rambo approved.
Yeah.
I don't think they're absolute S tier. Paul Walker's not driving an Alfa right now.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think I would actually end up right back in the Brent Rambo approved category again. Just because I think if you could sum up Alfa in one word, it's just cool. Acura.
Yeah, I agree.
It's fine.
I don't. Well, I will say, I think in my view, it's really hard to separate Acura and Honda. Probably it's harder for me to make that separation than Toyota and Lexus or Nissan and Infiniti.
Yeah, definitely.
Just because there are literally Hondas that just got an Acura badge on them, and there's no difference between that and the car that is in the US.
Arguably, their best car is the prime example of that, the NSX.
Right.
So,
in my view, I see Acura. I have things like the Integra Type R, the NSX. Those are also Hondas.
Yeah.
So
Civic
in my
Type
view,
R, Nürburgring front wheel drive record.
Right.
I mean, you can't really dock Honda at any point.
So this is probably a little bit of a foreshadowing what's to come.
Yeah.
But I actually think this possibly deserves Paul Walker Garage in the Sky.
I'm going to have to agree with you, particularly because of Honda. So I think we should just go ahead and put Honda and Acura right there together.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, if we had to speak only on Acura, I wouldn't put it here. But as a package deal,
I agree. I think, when I think about what cars are literally the greatest of all time, we have things like the Civic Type R. And don't mean me too hard, because I realize that the current Civic Type R is kind of a monstrosity. People only feel that way about it because they know how good the previous car was and how much of a pedigree that line has. So, I think they have a genuine mix of, yes, they're a mainstream manufacturer. They make the Econo slush bucket for the everyman, but none of those are bad cars. I mean, you'll see Civics that are completely clapped out, 30 years old, still tearing it up at the track or the autocross. So I think that is kind of the standard when it comes to reliable cars that can be sold mass market and also have very high performance potential.
All right, moving right along. We got Citroen. who cares about Citroen? I don't.
I mean, Citroen does have a decent pedigree, or at least history. I don't know if I call it pedigree, but I've never driven a Citroen. I've never even seen a Citroen in person.
It's nothing personal. We're just U.S. market drivers. Chevy, I imagine the poster behind you has some things to say about this one.
I do. So if this list had Corvette on it as a separate brand, which it does not, and many people have debated for a long time that Corvette should split out from underneath Chevrolet and become its own brand in the GM lineup. This is a tough one for me. I'm not going to sit here and be a complete shill and say that Chevy is, this is the run-done tootin'est best manufacturer that ever did it. But I will say, I think it might be the best American manufacturer that we're going to get to. I know Ford is going to be a big battle for that title.
As someone who's not really in the market or interested in purchasing any American cars anytime soon, Chevy's definitely my favorite. Even if you took Corvette out of the mix, I think I would take the top-tier Camaro over the top-tier Mustang most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they definitely make some terrible cars. Well, I should say they definitely have made some terrible cars. But yeah, I mean, the Corvette is a hard hitter. The Camaro is a hard hitter. Those are truly, those might be some of the only truly track-specific focused, like we are trying to sell them to people that are going to take it to the track cars on this list that are mainstream. GM is the world's largest auto manufacturer, or was. So, it's definitely hard to make the case to the C-suite that we need to sell track cars and that needs to be our bread and butter. But they're trying to do it, and I think they're doing it very well right now.
Yeah, so if you ask me, if Corvette was separate, Corvette goes straight to Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky, whereas the rest of Chevy probably sits right at great value brand for the everyman down in the South. With the existence of the Camaro kind of being in Brent Rambo territory and the rest of the brand kind of wavering back and forth, I think we can probably end up with a solid thumbs up.
It can't really go all the way to the top, but it deserves the strongest second you can possibly give it.
Yeah, again, and to Chevy's marketing team, who has largely separated Corvette over the years anyway,
yeah,
you're correct.
And honestly, drive a modern Chevy. They're, as far as like base equipment, they're excellent. Apple CarPlay, great infotainment system.
One thing we're probably not going to talk about much with any of these lists is trucks. You can't argue too much with Chevy trucks, Ford trucks, just being all around.
Oh, well, the horns down on the bottom of the list might have something to say about that. Okay. But they are a great all-around brand, making something for every single person in the U.S. market. And they're trying to do it at an exceptionally high level without getting too crazy in price. So I think they deserve, minimum Brent Rambo.
Okay, Saleen. I'll tell you what I think about Saleen. It was a really fun car to drive, the Saleen S7 in Midnight Club 3 Dove Edition when I was... in 6th grade or 4th grade. I don't remember what that
I mean, this is one of those, they make cool cars, but are we really going to sit here and give them the same stats and run through that Toyota's going to get?
They're not worth more than 15 seconds of conversation. Volkswagen, largest auto group in the world, but that encompasses a lot of the sub-brands that'll be separate on this list. So Volkswagen alone.
Yeah, so I think this is one where we need to separate them out because Volkswagen does have things like Porsche and Lamborghini and Audi underneath
these are
their
all
belt.
Going to be separate on the list.
So we're going to do those separate because Volkswagen doesn't really have as heavy a hand as somebody like Honda has on Acura.
Right, and it's not like... well, it is in some cases, like with the SUVs, you get platform sharing, but not everything is just a one-to-one mapping of we put fancier leather seats and charge you double for this one, like you get with Japan.
Yeah. So that being said, I actually like Volkswagen.
They're pretty good.
I think they're like Germany Chevy. That's probably not a compliment to most people that like Volkswagens, but they are genuinely trying to consider all options, bring a product for everybody to the market. They don't have the same high, super high performance supercar-y stuff because they do have Audi and Lamborghini for that.
Right. So if you grant them the diversion of their high performance stuff into their different sub brands, the stuff that they actually make under Volkswagen is just really solid A to B cars and some pretty fun, pseudo enthusiast hot hatches.
And I don't mean to sound, sentimental about Volkswagen because I've never owned one, but they do have some extremely unique things in their lineup, like the Bug, like the VW bus, so they have a cult following. As much as anyone else on this list does.
Yeah, and they've got prestige and, motorsports from super niche stuff to some mainstream stuff as well.
So that being said, I think my ultimate opinion is that I do like Volkswagen. I think they're a great car, especially if you don't want something that's just, pseudo-Japanese American people carrier. But I'm going to give them two very major docks in terms of what their status is. The first one is the scandal they had a couple years back.
Yep.
that is arguably one of the worst automotive like company trying to do some nasty stuff thing that's ever happened to any of these manufacturers.
That's true.
So I can't even bring myself to consider them for Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky,
Right.
just knowing that fact alone. I think the second reason that I wouldn't put them too high up is that they do have some reliability issues and some price issues, and they were also Hitler's car. So I cannot put
Yeah.
them
So-
in the top.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn between Great Value and Brent Rambo because on the most part, they're good cars. But as a company, when you take in business practices and just general popular opinion and stuff, I mean, they're pretty...
Yeah,
average.
I mean, I think for me, if I were to take out the cult following that like the Bugs and the VW people
Right.
have, I think they're a perfect candidate for Great Value just because this is literally what you buy when you don't want a Mercedes or a BMW.
Yeah, I think everything that we just talked about considered, I'll leave them there as well. So let's move along, though. Oldsmobile, I know we're right where that's going. There's not much argument there. That's pretty much...
All
where
right,
the
come on, the
company is.
Cutlass, though.
I could not care less about...
What? I'm a little bit tempted to put this in strong independent woman that don't need no man, because this is another one of those like GM owned this for a while and it just faded out into oblivion. So do we call this GM? Do we call this Oldsmobile? I don't know. I'll just say in terms of Oldsmobile specifically, I'm a 90s kid. You're a 90s kid. Nothing coming out of Oldsmobile in the 90s was going to make it, let alone onto this list, it wasn't going to make it out of the driveway. So I think this definitely deserves Bobby Bolivia's
Yeah,
penance.
and let's be honest, if you're going and you can't afford Bumblebee, you probably end up with the Oldsmobile that's been there since the 90s in that car lot. How do we feel about Ferrari? I want to put it next to Oldsmobile or...
Okay, so this is the part of the video that you skipped to just to see where we were going to put Ferrari. I have to... Okay, two things. First, I am the furthest thing from the car guy that just worships Ferrari and thinks that that is the ultimate, when I think of like supercar, I don't think Ferrari. I think McLaren, honestly, I think Corvette, not biased at all, is doing it better than Ferrari does it these days. However, I've always maintained that they do make really good cars. If you sit in a Ferrari, if you drive a Ferrari, even going back, I'll go back 20 years to now, I have never sat in a bad Ferrari. Now, I haven't sat in what people say are bad Ferraris, but they are genuinely amazing cars to drive.
I have sat in what I would consider a bad Ferrari. It might as well have been shag carpet interior from like Scooby-Doo's basement or something. It was ugly.
Well,
but obviously
I will
at the time it was a great car.
Yeah, at the time, I mean, if you're talking 80s Ferrari, I mean, Ferrari has made some bad cars, and I say bad in that if you're going to charge what Ferrari charges for a car and you're going to have the reliability schedule and problems that a Ferrari has, you cannot have a bad car.
Ferrari is responsible for some of the coolest cars ever made, and I don't think anybody who knows the difference between a car and a bicycle can say that Ferrari's just bad. But I also I don't think I'd ever give them my money. Money no object. That's not where
true. I
go.
don't think if I have Ferrari money, I'm ever buying a Ferrari. Now,
Also,
that being said, I have to give them some credit for every other supercar, even every other expensive sports car on this list. The gold standard is Ferrari.
That's fair.
It is impossible to compare anyone's supercar without mentioning the word Ferrari in the same sentence.
So I think they're gonna end up with a solid Brent Rambo for me because I think there's some cars that I would put in Paul Walker's Garage specifically because I'm like, oh, well, I'd rather have that than the Ferrari.
I agree. And I would be tempted to even bump them up just for nothing else except their racing pedigree. But Enzo Ferrari is also like one of the biggest dicks on the planet, and that's heavily involved with the way that they handle racing, so I can't quite do it. I think it's a solid Brent Rambo.
I'll stop it there because another reason that I wouldn't, money no object, want to go buy a Ferrari instead of a Lamborghini or something is because of the pretense surrounding their business. And I'm just not a huge fan of that, and right now their F1 team's terrible, so here we go. W Motors, that goes right there. They are the ones that make the Lykan Hypersport, so I know enough about W Motors to see the 12-second scene of it jumping through a window.
And if you're looking at that thumbnail having no idea who W Motors is, don't worry, I don't either.
You are correct. Hennessy, not as irrelevant as W Motors, but I still think they belong in the independent category.
I would say Hennessy actually probably arguably makes the coolest cars on this list, bar none. However, they don't actually make their own cars, so they're going to end up in the strong independent manufacturer that don't need no funding.
Right. That's just a consequence of the tier maker list we chose to use. Renault.
Okay,
Their F1 team is better than Ferrari.
I'll be the first to say I have zero experience with Renault. I have never driven one. I don't think I've ever actually even seen one in person. My entire opinion of them is based on knowing that they are a French manufacturer and that their F1 team is kind of cool. So
yeah, I'm kind of twisted on it because I don't have a ton of experience, but I don't think they deserve strong independent manufacturer because they're actually a huge manufacturer worldwide.
That's true.
And they have some dealings with Japanese manufacturers as well.
So based on the fact that I only really know about their F1 team, and they're definitely not Paul Walker's F1 team in the sky,
Right.
I think I'm going to go with probably Great Value brand.
Yeah, I'm going to say great value as well. I think they're better than runs and drives just because they have a reputation for some fun hot hatches too. If you want to know more, go watch Top Gear. Plymouth. I mean, can we just put the next? What? I couldn't
what do
tell
you mean the CUDA? How can you? They're not really relevant today, so we're just going to put them at the bottom.
It's just a product of my life growing up, I guess, that I don't care about them. Rolls Royce.
I saw it coming up. I think this is the spicy one right here.
Rolls Royce.
I do,
Okay.
because this, to a lot of people, particular people that might be into cars or like cars as a luxury item, but aren't necessarily performance oriented, Rolls Royce is the Ferrari.
right.
Like they are the gold standard
the
of this
pinnacle,
list,
yeah.
right? Again, I've never sat in a bad Rolls Royce. I've never driven a bad Rolls Royce. However, the only two that I've driven, one was the, oh god, what's like the poster boy,
The Phantom?
rapper? Yeah. Okay, so I've driven a Phantom. I've also driven an '80s Silver Spirit, both when they were relatively new, or at least relevant in that current car market. As far as everything we're talking about, like build quality,
Yeah. So
prestige, cult following, they are the best. I mean,
yeah,
there's no other,
Here's
like-
the thing. Let's say, obviously, these category names are meme names, right? It's just top tier, bottom tier, whatever. But if Paul Walker was designing a garage in the sky and you wanted a daily, it's going to be a Rolls Royce.
I mean, yeah, you kind of want to believe that God is literally rolling around in a Rolls
Yeah,
right now. I mean, I will say terrible investments.
Sure, I'm
you
never
don't
gonna
buy
buy
these at all for the value or for the price.
But there's a lot of things I wouldn't buy that I still sit there and in wonderment and
yeah,
and
I think genuinely a Rolls Royce is a status symbol that if you know nothing else about cars, you
Yeah.
know about Rolls Royce, and when you drive one, they are legitimately different, completely different experiences to any other car you drive.
I think they deserve their place at the top, just not where I would find myself sitting.
Also, BMW owns them now, so there's something for that.
I knew there's some bias there. All right, Mazda. The answer is always Miata, but all their other cars are really meh.
Okay, I have to say, I don't like Mazda as my, pea-brain car guy turf war person, but this next to maybe GM is the next most track-focused, most track-oriented brand on
Absolutely,
this list.
but the thing is that it's really only with like one or two of their cars that they actually care about that sort of thing.
That's true.
The others all fall right into like the runs and drives category for me, but those few cars are so good that the whole manufacturer gets held up by them.
Actually, I have a slightly different take on Mazda from their slush box approach. I think there are definitely some terrible Mazdas, and we could have an entire podcast on just the rotary engine and how good, not good that is.
Right.
But I think Mazda has sort of carved out this space in the car world of if you afford, or for whatever reason you need to afford or need to buy the people carrier, you need to buy the Corolla, the Civic. Mazda is sort of who you turn to have that little bit of extra spice
That's
and
fair.
still buy an everyman car. And then, of course, they have some outright performance monsters like the RX-7.
Yeah.
RX-8, not really. The Miata is, we mean the Miata, but it's a great car.
They've held on to the manual transmission longer than a lot of manufacturers as well, which is always good.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate Miatas. I think they're the bane of my existence. I don't
They are
wanna
really fun, though.
I don't want to listen to one more person talk about their Miata, but the new Miata is really nice. I really like the ND. It looks great. If I didn't hate Miatas, I'd probably buy one.
I like most of the Miatas. I learned to drive stick in B. It's not what I want really. It's not the type of car that I like, but you can't deny that they're fun and solid performance cars. So
Yeah, so I
are we
think
thinking Brent Rambo? Are we thinking great value? The Miata by itself, Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky. Everything else, I think that brings it down.
so. I'm gonna throw out a little bit of a technicality here.
Okay.
Given that our list is effectively a 5-slot list because the bottom category, it's not a comment on whether the cars are good or bad.
Right.
I don't think I can bring myself to put some manufacturer that made the RX-7 and the Miata at the mid-tier or lower, so I think I have to put them in Brent Rambo approved.
I'm okay with that. Infinity. So this is, with Honda and Acura, we talked about how there's not a huge separation, at least in my mind, between those two. Infinity and Nissan, you have a very similar thing there where it's a lot of the same platform with just slightly different
Okay,
body
so I'm going to
and
ask you straight out, since...
But, well, let me finish. As the Z guy, I will never buy an Infinity.
Okay, well, what I was going to ask you is, as the diehard Nissan person, do you want to separate Infinity and Nissan on this list, or do you want to lump them together? Because I will go a little step further and say Infinity only exists because the US exists. It's not really something that's mainstream by any stretch.
So I would argue for that reason alone, you can't actually separate them.
Okay, I think that's fair.
I would emphasize that for my personal choices, I would always take the more stripped down 2-seater coupe version. I don't need the luxury 2+2, but that doesn't mean that those are bad. It's just not what I care about. So you'll always find me in the Z and never the G or the Q or Z, X, Y, Alpha, whatever they're going to call it. And, they're going to run out of some names soon.
So what you're saying is we're doing Nissan and Infinity right now.
So we can
together.
do Nissan and Infinity right now. So obviously I'm going straight to Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky because you can't put the creator of the GTR and the Z in anywhere except glory.
Nissan didn't create the GTR.
Okay, Prince. That's fair. Datsun created the Z. Okay, you're right. Nissan's not responsible for anything.
No. I'll give them. I will say, as much as I meme Aaron, and I'm not a Nissan fan by any stretch of the imagination, they do have what, in my opinion, are two very formidable cars in their lineup that have very diehard, obviously, cult followings. Yeah. One being the Z, one being the GTR. It is impossible to compare any car on this list in terms of performance or value for money without talking about a GTR. So they definitely aren't going in great value brand, I don't think.
No, you can't. And so I'll offer you one concession. Obviously, I want them in Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky, but for the same reason that we didn't put Chevy there, I think Nissan ends up with Chevy, where I would put the Corvette by itself, Paul Walker's Garage. The GTR by itself, Paul Walker's Garage. The Z by itself, Paul Walker's Garage. Everything else they make, really couldn't care less. The CVT is terrible. My mom's Pathfinder has had the check engine light on since 2008. Still runs though.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the Z Proto podcast. I think my biggest problem with Nissan is not reliability or price or performance. I think they actually hit all those marks very well. My biggest problem with Nissan is they don't offer anything that you can't get somewhere else, and their car lineup genuinely is in dire need of serious updates and revolutions. Yeah. So for that reason alone, I can't give them the Paul Walker. I think they're a strong, great value brand / Brent Rambo approved.
I'll give you that. If we were going to separate them out, then I would put Nissan above Infinity, but I think it's fair enough to say that they're the same car. It's just the marketing in the United States that leads us there. So we got Ram.
Ooh boy.
I don't care about trucks. But they're really good. My dad has one now. It's his dad's old one.
I have a very biased, but I dare you to Google me and prove me wrong. Ram trucks are the best trucks worldwide. They're the best for towing. They have the Cummins diesel. If you're going to be serious about having a truck, you're going to have a Ram.
Yeah, my dad is raving about the used truck that he got from your dad. Your dad's raving about the new truck. That is the reason he sold his old one. I mean, obviously, we can put them in Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky as the top tier for what they are. But I just want the viewers to be clear. This doesn't mean that we think Ram is better than Ferrari.
Right. So if you just tuned in now, you have to know this is specifically Ram trucks. That's what we're doing right now.
And all of these judgments are. This isn't like, we don't have a rubric that we're grading all these manufacturers on the same rubric. It's just for what they are, for our preferences, etc.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm grading trucks, Ford, Chevy, Ram, don't even talk to me about Toyota or Honda. Just literally get out of here.
All right. This Ram not better than Ferrari. But Ferrari doesn't make trucks.
Ram is better than Ferrari. What do you mean?
You actually might be right.
The Cummins drivetrain, best drivetrain worldwide.
Okay. Kia. Let's be honest.
All right, let me play devil's advocate.
Stinger.
They
Stinger
have
is
been
really
making
good.
some really good cars lately.
The Stinger is really good.
I think this is actually a case of this car manufacturer was so terrible for so long, they actually have to go above and beyond to even be considered in the conversation.
Yes, that's true.
So I think they're going to go in runs and drive just because anything that's used is probably terrible, but their new cars look really good.
Right, and for that same reason, I went ahead and skipped Hyundai up next because I think it's a very relevant conversation. Kia and Hyundai are both brands where 15 to 20 years ago, genuinely just the worst cars you can find. In terms of design, that a child drew an ovular object and threw some wheels on it, and they 3D printed it and put a 1-liter engine in it.
I think in the same stroke, though, there's no way we can put Hyundai anywhere that Kia is in.
No, but that's where I was going to bring up my point is I think Hyundai, they've both made amazing strides to become actually good cars recently, but Hyundai much more so than Kia. I think like the best Hyundai is just a good car in the way that the best Kia is like a passable car. Now.
What car does Hyundai make that you think is putting them above Kia?
I think this is not from personal experience, but people seem to be giving high praise to the Genesis lineup these days, and that's not separated out on this list anywhere. Now,
But you don't think the Stinger is competing with that?
I mean, it is, but I think like your average Hyundai is better than your average Kia, and I think the best Hyundai is better than the
Okay,
best
so
Kia.
I'll give Hyundai a bump up just because they're at least the first to try when it comes to things like the Genesis, the Tiburon, I guess.
Yeah, I just
before
think
that.
Hyundai's making more strides in both technology and luxury, and just like
I think if they're doing something sporty, they're doing it before Kia, so they can get a rung up from that.
Also, Veloster in somehow driver's car.
It's true, Veloster and Car and Driver, Car and Driver? Motor Trend.
Motor Trend.
Motor Trend Car of the Year, yeah.
Car and Driver, one of the two.
It's cool.
Everybody loves it. I couldn't say that I care or have any experience. Maserati. It's pretty
Okay, so
obvious,
this
right?
is where my opinion on Ferrari differs strongly. I have no idea why Maserati exists. This is probably the one brand that I hate arbitrarily the most of any brand on here.
You get all the unreliability of a Ferrari with none of the coolness.
It's like, let's make a luxury Ferrari. Said whoever. Ferraris are like these Italian suede leather boots that you wear on your butt. Like, who is buying a Maserati? I don't understand.
And they have to charge so much less than Ferrari that they don't get any of the QA of Ferrari.
Literally, I don't like, you want a 4-door Ferrari, cool, like, I guess, but they're just terrible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who buys this without buying something else.
They're not good. They're just bad. Okay, Porsche. I'm not a Porsche diehard, but it's hard to argue with facts.
Okay, the second brand I hate the most on this list is actually Porsche because I'm a strong believer, and this is literally a Volkswagen bug that they've somehow got everyone to buy into. I mean, but I have to admit, racing pedigree.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is as
off
a
the charts.
brand, we're not just talking about the 911. Especially the last decade, you have to include the Cayman and the GT4 version of that and things like that. And as a brand, as a manufacturer, they have the largest R&D budget, the most enthusiast support, probably the most racing pedigree across probably every.
Yeah,
single
I would actually
sport.
say if we're saying Ferrari is the gold standard of performance, whatever.
Yeah.
Porsche is like right there next to them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Now, I will say there's no chance in hell this is going in Paul Walker's garage because this is literally what he died in, and he wasn't even driving.
That is, I kind of forgot about that. So right there you go. That is a good point. Although you could argue it would be the first car in the garage, technically.
Oh my god. I like Porsche, but they've been trying to make mid-engine cars for the past 20 years by just moving their rear engine a little bit further to the middle.
Yep.
So I think it's a lot of hype. They killed Paul Walker. They're going not in Paul
They can't
Walker's
go in
garage.
Paul Walker's garage. That's fair. Okay. Mercedes, I think there's some contention here because they arguably are like the OG car manufacturer.
That's true.
Their cars are always good, but they're never really special. And then when something does go wrong, it's very expensive.
Yeah, so I think
And they have the worst depreciation curve of anything you can purchase ever.
for me, I think their engineering and obviously their current racing pedigree is better than anyone else
Right.
on
If
this
you want to
list.
throw Formula One in here, we need an entire new
Yeah,
category.
so
for them.
I would say for me, the only thing that's knocking them out of Paul Walker's garage is going to be one, there's some German manufacturers on this list we haven't gotten to yet, which I would take an Audi or a BMW over the Mercedes variant any day. The second is, I don't think they really make supercars. I think they make very fancy, fast, high performance, dressed up.
See,
Whatevers.
I have to immediately disagree because the AMG GTR is one of the most competitive street cars made right now.
Where's the mid-engine Mercedes?
Okay, they don't make a mid-engine car, but it's
They-
front mid. It's legitimately
What would you?
it's a
Okay, but
backwards.
what would you
mid-engine
say
car.
is the fastest, all-out, most track-oriented Mercedes?
It
And
probably
don't
is-
say Lewis Hamilton's F1 car.
No. In terms of what you go to a dealership and buy, it's probably the current AMG GTR. They just released,
Which is a giant,
edition of that.
overweight, penis-nosed
No,
monstrosity.
I think it's great. I love that car.
I think
Sorry.
it's great, but are you going to buy that over a Porsche or Ferrari or a Lamborghini?
See, I personally, well, no, not over a Lamborghini, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But I personally would buy the AMG GT over those other things.
I think Mercedes are great. I think they
Brent
are.
Rambo.
See, I
You
I don't.
can't- I don't
Okay,
think
okay.
you can-
If we, I know this isn't a comparison thing, but you got Mercedes, BMW, and Audi on the list.
Yeah.
Who goes where?
I would put. Okay,
Does Mercedes really go above any of those others?
I think it sits at. I don't think it sits below them. I don't think it necessarily sits above them either. I think it sits with them.
If you ask me, I think Mercedes is actually a great value brand of Germany.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
Okay.
I don't
but-
think they're necessarily
okay.
undeserving of Brent Rambo, but
Perhaps. But if we're going to include things like Renault's Formula One team and our argument about Renault, we have to include it in our argument about.
Well,
Mercedes.
except
It's just-
Renault's Formula One team was the only thing we included about Renault.
That's true. It's
I know this is contentious. I'm just saying, in my mind, I'm not saying where I'm going to put BMW or Audi.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I take either of those over Mercedes any day of the week.
We'll see. TVR, we don't have to talk about that.
For the record, TVR is great. Tried to single-handedly save the
but
British
it is,
sports car
but
industry.
it is the very definition of your British shed-built car.
Yes,
that
it is
they make.
very much a strong, independent. So independent that no one actually. I mean, nobody's willing to buy them right now.
Toyota makes and sells as many cars in like every 30 seconds as TVR does in a year. So
Great cars, completely irrelevant.
yeah, Peugeot. I realize this isn't an independent manufacturer, but I have as
If we
little
put
information
Citroen
about
down
them-
there, we have to put Peugeot down
I agree,
there.
yeah.
So yeah.
We have a little more information about Renault because of their association with some Japanese brands and their Formula One team and things like that. Peugeot and Citroen is just not something we care about in the U.S. Lancia.
This is probably the next hottest topic next to Alpha.
This is sort of your like cult classic car brand.
Yeah,
right?
I will say, in terms of modern day, like 2020, this is a completely irrelevant brand.
Yeah, I mean, so your average person on the street would put them immediately down here with Peugeot and Citroen because in the United States you've probably never heard of them,
Right.
Unless you're an enthusiast, and if you're an enthusiast, then you've probably heard a lot about them. Actually, they're like rally pedigree. They're just like general weirdness and coolness.
For me, this car is the car that I had never seen or heard of aside from the World Rally Championship.
Yeah.
And this was the absolute god tier, like, this was the mythical being of WRC.
So, snap decision. What are you thinking?
I think it's genuinely not fair to grade these guys like we would grade some of the modern manufacturers on this list. So I think they deserve strong independent manufacturers that don't need no man, but these are genuinely, that's probably the best manufacturer of the ones that are down there.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, Ford. Big blue oval. The modern Mustangs are really good. I pretty much despise every Mustang before 2013 or 14, or I guess 2015 was the newest update, right?
Okay, all I'm gonna say about Ford in terms of what is influencing my ranking of them is that I wouldn't call myself diehard Chevy, but I obviously I like Chevy. I take most Chevys over any Ford, and I say this as someone that has owned multiple Ford products and multiple GM products. My love of Ford actually comes from a car that I will probably never even see in my lifetime, which is the GT40.
Yeah.
That is the all-out American, go to war story that is literally a motion picture now.
Yeah,
so.
and the new Ford GT is one of the best looking cars being made right now. I mean, I'm not gonna ever pay or tell someone else that it is worth paying $400,000 for a car like that.
This is literally like, this is America's car. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't say any brand is more American than this.
I think you have to remove bias and say that Ford goes where Chevy goes, in my opinion. Because
I don't know. See, I'm tempted to say they're Paul Walker though.
really,
For no other reason other than Ford has done more for the American auto industry, even though GM is, they can outsell them all any day of the week.
Yep.
The GT40 and the Mustang alone are iconic revolutions in terms of like,
That's true,
not
actually.
car culture, just culture in general.
Yeah, and on other manufacturers, we've talked about racing pedigree. We've talked about manufacturer as in terms of like marketing and business practice and stuff. And Ford, like, as much as I probably would not like Henry Ford as a person, the assembly line and everything that came out of Ford.
Yeah, I mean, for
super
me, I
important.
think it's hard to imagine what modern American like business and mass manufacturing would be
Right.
without Ford, as much as it is hard for me to imagine what like sports car racing would be without Ford.
Right. But aside from the GT and the GT40, you're probably going to find me in a Corvette over any other Ford. But as a business, as a brand, I'll put them up there. This is probably something most of you don't even know what you're looking at right now. This is AMC, I believe, the producers of the Gremlin, which speaks for itself, and we can move on to Lexus.
Okay, so do we do Toyota and Lexus together or separate?
I think we do them. I think we do them. This is the one Japanese brand like this where I want to do them separately because I think
that's fair. I think
They
that's
have-
fair because Lexus gets hard compared to their German counterparts, and no
Exactly.
one mentions Toyota. So I think it's fair to do them separate.
yeah, I think the demographic for purchasing them is entirely different.
So obvious first thing right off the bat, the LFA. Some people argue that's the greatest car of all
Yeah,
time.
yep.
It's also probably the longest one in production,
Yep.
and its price is insane.
And down in consumer advice territory, they're known for having the best possible reputation for like service and warranty and things like that. I've not driven many Lexi, but it's hard to. It's just they're kind of boring in their enthusiast factor now on the affordable end. The LCs are really cool in my opinion, but then you have something like the RC350 or whatever, they're sort of mid-range cars, and it's just like 600 pounds heavier than everything else it competes with.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to talk about Lexus, I think it comes down to just two factors for me. The first is this is literally the great value brand of German engineering.
That's true.
The only reason you buy a Lexus in most cases is because you didn't.
Right.
You weren't able to get the BMW or the Mercedes.
It
that you
is
wanted.
exactly what you go for value in both luxury, reliability.
Yeah, and then I'll also say
and
the
fun.
only high performance thing that they can kind of tout as beating out everyone else is the LFA. Their current like RCF type things, F Sport, whatever,
Right.
are absolute trash. So
Yeah,
I'm tempted to put them in runs and drives, but Lexus is also the most reliable luxury
Right.
car
No,
possibly.
I think they fit squarely in the middle.
Yeah.
Lotus.
Okay, this is
Some of
100% going in Paul Walker's
Yeah,
garage. I
it's-
don't even want to hear your argument.
No,
for
I don't
this.
have an argument. The Lotus Exige, with or without modifications, but especially with a bunch of modifications, might be my favorite car. Period.
No, I think this is an example of a truly uncompromising sports car brand. They're mass market.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely in bed with Toyota. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. They fixed the one problem that people didn't like about them, which is their reliability. These
And
cars,
now they're owned by Volvo, right? So they've got some money.
right? I
Hopefully
mean,
we'll
yeah,
see some
these
cool
cars are an absolute dream to drive. You can't get a harder cult following, track oriented anything.
Yeah, and they've also never given up despite some funding issues.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that we don't get a lot of their new stuff in the U.S. because of that. But
Yeah, I think the only reason they struggle is because there isn't a Lotus people carrier, and they are
That's true.
one of the greatest cars
But
you
I
could possibly
also
drive.
think it would kind of bring them down a notch if they did start.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, being a cult is
Right.
it goes both ways, right?
All right. Yeah, firmly at the top. Jaguar. I love modern Jaguars.
Oh wait, really?
I don't have much.
Oh wait, I
exposure-
kind of hate that you said that because I was going to also say that I love
Interesting.
Jags.
I can't. I mean, we can't argue on everything. The F Type is beautiful. It sounds amazing. It drives well. I was really torn between an F-Type R and a GTR when I was looking, but I just wanted a Nissan and I wanted something as fast as possible.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think as far as iconic Jags go, you've got the E-Type, possibly one of the greatest looking cars of
responsible
all
for
time.
almost every design I've ever
Yeah.
liked.
Also extremely affordable. I
Yeah.
mean, for what it is, always known as a brand that is, coming in on the MSRP line.
They're
below.
certainly not cheap, but for what you get,
They're not cheap,
yeah.
but they're definitely below their German counterparts.
Yeah, I think they got to be at least Brent Rambo approved.
They have some reliability issues,
Yep.
for sure. The modern ones, I think, are pretty nice. I mean, I can't say that a Jag is necessarily more unreliable than a BMW,
No,
Mercedes,
I wouldn't
Audi.
be afraid of buying one.
And I think they make some of the best looking cars that have ever been made. So I'm tempted to put them in Paul Walker's garage in the sky.
I think we can go with that, because if you were designing a money no object heavenly garage, you probably have an E-Type in there. I would probably have an F-Type in there if I didn't have any of these other choices to argue about. So we can put them up there. BAC is the very definition of... I mean, the BAC Mono is one of the coolest cars I think you can buy with money right now, but they make like 3 a year, and who even has one of these? So
Yeah, if you told your wife you were going to go car shopping and you took her to a BAC dealership or website, she would ask you where the cars are.
Okay, Mercury. I feel like you have to throw Mercury in next to Plymouth and Oldsmobile, right? I mean, why are these things even different?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely just like... We could have done this with Ford, and honestly, if they were combined with Ford, Ford wouldn't be in the top tier right now.
No, not at all.
Literally, just buy a Lincoln or a Ford. What are you doing, Mercury?
Yeah. Okay, GMC. I just don't care about GMC. I feel like they're...
Yeah,
I want to put them solidly in runs and drives, because I think they're actually below average in terms of coolness, in terms of performance, in terms of
Okay,
reliability.
so I will say GMC is sort of the like uppity brand of Chevy products.
But of the Chevy products that we like, there's not really a
Right, so
GMC
they don't make... There's no GMC Corvette or Camaro,
Right,
so I get that.
So
but
you can argue that this is just a factor of the person who made this list that separated them out, but I think GMC suffers because of that.
I have a different opinion. I'm actually going to say strong independent manufacturer that needs no man, because this is literally like the paper Dixie cup in GM's lobby. Like, this is only around because they're making Chevys. Like, there's no difference between anything GMC makes and their Chevy equivalent.
I just don't think GMC fits our definition of an independent manufacturer. Like, these are all...
No, but I think it's clippings on the newsroom floor of GM. Like,
Okay.
I think they could keep it or leave it. It wouldn't matter.
Okay. Jeep. I would like the Grand Cherokee as a tow vehicle. I don't really care about the Wrangler. I'm not a big off-road person.
I've driven in my life. I've driven one Jeep. It was a loaner, but it was bright orange. It was a oh god, this is how little I know about Jeeps. What is like the very boxy canvas top one? The Wrangler. It was a four-door Wrangler.
Yikes.
Canvas top, bright orange with a manual. I have to say, I hooned the shit out of it. It was incredible. It was a terrible car in every objective, like, performance car way, but I can definitely see the appeal of having just, like, a canvas top manual Jeep.
And I think we'd probably have rioters at our front door if we didn't acknowledge.
Okay, I'll back that up with a little bit of that. Jeep is ultimately a military-rooted brand,
yeah.
and we won the war, so I'm willing to say that, American trucks, best trucks worldwide. So I don't think I can say Bobby Bolivia's used car lot.
No.
They're also, I mean, if you want something that literally runs through anything, that's what you buy, right? If you're going to go off-roading and literally crash into stuff, you buy a Jeep.
I think they sit squarely in the middle, They have some really... I don't want to say really good, but just objectively good vehicles like the Wrangler that have a ton of support behind them. And then they make a lot of like really boring.
Yeah, I'm gonna say because they make things.
So I'm kind of hovering between great value and runs and drives, but I think great value is probably deserved because they're a loved brand for a lot of reasons that we just don't care about.
Yeah, OG Jeeps and arguably like the Wrangler, top tier. But then they have things like that stupid truck that they have now.
Oh, the Gladiator Jeep is one of the ugliest vehicles.
And then they've got the like shark nose looking like crossover. So
Yep.
they're not going near the top.
All right, Audi. Audi is maybe my favorite German brand. I gotta be honest. The R8. I love the R8.
Okay, I also love Audi. Had a TT for a while. It was an excellent car. It looked great, especially for the time that it was around in.
Hot take. I think Audi makes the best interiors of any brand, including
Yeah,
Italian
Audi
supercars.
interiors are amazing. They were doing diamond stitching before people knew what diamond stitching
Yeah.
was.
I mean-
Now I have to say, this brand is. There's not many brands that people know for unreliable more than people know Audi. I think that's actually not deserved.
And I don't-
think
well,
modern Audis are
I was
very
going to say I
reliable.
don't think it's deserved anymore, but I think a lot of the people that have those opinions were in their their prime car buying age when Audi was at a much more irreputable point.
Yeah, so I think for me, what it's looking like has shaped up right now. At least every car in the top has a very unique, defining feature or
Yeah.
era or whatever. I don't think Audi actually has that. Well known in the rally scene, they make drop dead gorgeous cars,
Yep.
excellent interiors, but you can't really say that they're doing it all that more differently than some of their other competitors. Even though I think they're great, I don't think they deserve Paul Walker's garage. in the
No,
sky.
but I definitely think they stand above Mercedes, for example. So I think we land in Brent Rambo.
I do. I would take
Yeah.
almost any Audi over any Mercedes, so I think
Agreed.
they go Brent Rambo.
Agreed. BMW, they're fine. I like BMW. I know what you're gonna say. We don't even have to let me speak.
Okay,
on this
okay.
one.
Let me.
But before I just turn over the floor, I had an M235. I really enjoyed that car, but at the end of the day, it was still like a compromised car for me because I couldn't afford a GTR yet. I mean, I
I mean,
love
that's
it. I like a lot
high
of
praise.
BMWs.
High praise. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the thing you settled for from a GTR was BMW.
That's fair. So for me personally, it lands in Brent Rambo approved. They make everything they make is good, but nothing is very exciting for me. And I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Okay. Prosecution. I would like to submit the evidence
Yes,
for
please
the
do.
defense of BMW. Okay, so I will freely admit I am more biased towards this manufacturer than any other manufacturer on this list, possibly any other car person that would defend BMW.
It's true.
But let me give you a very brief personal history. For my entire childhood, I couldn't rub two pennies together for anything to do with BMW. I didn't care about them. They meant nothing to me. I didn't think they were particularly good looking. Then I got my driver's license and I drove a couple. I can honestly say I haven't driven every single performance car on this list from these manufacturers, but I've driven a fair amount of them. What people say about pivot around your hips BMW handling is 100% true. There is no other manufacturer on this list that right out of the box makes cars that feel like BMWs. Yes, they make some cars that are sub-tier, but I don't think they make any god-awful trash. I mean, yeah, like the X1.
Yeah.
Like, that's not good,
Well-
but it's only not good because you compare it to other BMWs.
Well, also, here's the thing. I think everything negative I would have to say about BMW is that it's not likable, not that it's bad. There's nothing really objectively
Correct.
bad. Like, the X3 is great for a lot of people. It's kind of meh. if
So
you ask me.
throwing my bias aside, I have to make one case that I think most car people would agree with. You would not have things like, well, I mean, I was going to say like the Stinger and the Genesis, but it goes much deeper than that. The original daily driver, do the grocery run cars that are also completely track focused, tear your face off machines, to quote Top Gear. That's BMW. You compare everything to the M5. You compare everything to the M3. Even if you hate those cars,
fair.
everybody gets compared to that. I think they're the gold standard of everyday, daily drivable performance
All right,
cars.
I'll give you that one for now. Volvo. Very safe. I know that much. Very
I'm actually tempted to put this in the top because Paul Walker wouldn't have died if they were in a Volvo. R.I.P.
But they're just really good, solid cars. I think the modern ones especially look good. The old ones definitely don't look good.
I think they are good. They have a solid cult following. The new stuff they do with Yamaha is pretty sick. I think they're overpriced for what they are. And
I do think they're overpriced as well and a little bit niche. But I think one thing, like for just being good, reliable, safe car. I have to say, like, if I was a parent, this is the very first brand.
Yeah, I mean, they literally are synonymous with safety, whether
Right.
that's deserved or not, I don't know. But I think that you can't put them anywhere
Right.
near great value or below. So I
No,
think it's
so
solidly Brent Rambo.
I think it's solidly Brent Rambo too, because everything they do is great, but nothing is exquisite or exciting or whatever the best hyperbole you can think of is. if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's fair.
Okay, Buick is an American brand that by a lot of the other sub brands being eliminated and dying throughout the early 2000s, they got a huge boost instead.
Yeah, so this is
Much
one of the
better now
ones.
than ever
This is
before,
one of the
but
ones that
still, like-
GM post 2008 bailout decided to rally behind. I actually think the modern Buicks are like great
They're-
cars
yeah.
as far as just basic car.
But as a brand, like, who cares?
they have some heritage, but I will say this is like the middleman between Chevy and Cadillac. And since we're going to do Chevy and we're going to do Cadillac in a little bit, I would rather just throw this into strong independent brand that needs no man.
Okay. But only for the same reason as GMC. Not
Right,
because it's
exactly.
actually-
Not because it's bad. It's
Right.
not, and
It's
it's
just-
a well-known, it's fully backed GM product.
Right.
But we're gonna do Chevy. We
It's
already did
just-
Chevy. We're
yeah,
gonna do
it-
Cadillac, so we don't need to spend any
It's
time.
kind
on
of
it.
irrelevant for the sake of this list. Shelby, I feel the same way about Shelby as I feel about most modern Mustangs. It's like,
Well, so I
like
put
Shelby.
Ford in the top tier. Shelby deserves to be right there with them, except Shelby was like Ford's secret sauce in that whole story.
And they kind of are just a secret sauce
right.
company, right?
So,
They're not a standalone
so rest
manufacturer.
assured, they're right there with Ford, but
Yeah.
we're not going to put them both up.
All
there.
right, Tesla. This has got to be our thumbnail. Why do we feel about Tesla? Okay, I have as a major techie, right? My master's degree in computer science really likes Tesla. Everything else about me really.
My
does
master's
not
degree
like
in
Tesla.
cybersecurity does not.
That's a good point. I have respect for their technology and their sort of force on the industry to make a lot of modernizations that they wouldn't have to otherwise. But as a business, I really despise them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say Elon Musk is a lot of their public face, and he's quite a controversial figure.
Yeah.
I personally am glad Elon exists. I think as an American, I mean, as a current, resident of America, inventor, and pioneer, you can't really argue with his work, and I believe that he'll probably rise in popularity after his death.
I agree. You can't argue with his work, but you can argue with just about everything
Right.
else about
So,
it.
and their meme, finance my new project by pre-ordering my Cybertruck at $100
And
a
then we'll
pop.
paint it in the parking lot because we ran out
Right.
of manufacturing.
Now,
capabilities.
however, I'm gonna say, ain't nobody doing electric cars like Tesla, and they struggled for a really long time to make that dream happen. Whether you like electric cars or not, I genuinely believe electric cars are what's going to end up saving the sports car market, because eventually when the oil runs out, and eventually when, whether it's for public opinion or governments, either way, the 600 horsepower sports car is dying.
If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I would say I will never well, I'm not going to say never, but I would currently never buy a Tesla myself. But I'd actually probably recommend it to some friends. So that doesn't, I can't hate the brand entirely.
No, I agree. Now, I think as far as like uniqueness factor, these guys actually possibly deserve Paul Walker's garage in the sky.
I will in the video right now. That's where I put Tesla.
But I can't actually recommend anyone that cares about cars to go out and buy Tesla.
No, and I think eventually when other manufacturers catch on in the sort of electric innovation, Tesla could just fall by the wayside.
I
50
think
years'
I
time.
think they're the pioneers, but they're doing something important that must be done. But they're not.
They're the sacrifice along the.
They're not going to be. I don't know if they're a sacrifice. They're very nice, fast cars.
Yeah.
But I personally think they're going to be Brent Rambo approved.
Okay, I'll leave it there. That's fair. I would never allow them in Paul Walker's garage, but for a lot of people, they're doing great stuff. It's just, I don't know. They seem kind of scummy. I don't like complimenting them at all from marketing and business.
Well, if I'm just judging the cars are good.
Right, but Elon and their marketing department and their
Maybe
sales
that's what
team
he has to do in order to make them good. You don't know.
I don't know. I just think you can't like sell self-driving like that and then let it not be self-driving truly, but that's an argument for another video. Caterham is the very definition of a British shed built. I mean, probably the best, most successful of these.
This is another one
sales
that
numbers
is
and
absolutely
support.
amazing, but they do not make enough products with
Right.
enough variety for us to pretend like they're on the same playing field with the rest of them.
How do we feel about Bugatti? It's a big name in pop culture, in enthusiast culture, I mean, everybody knows what Bugatti is, either because you listen to rap or because you...
Right, so Bugatti's
cars.
claim to fame, at least nowadays, is the Veyron, trying to break
Just pure
production
numbers.
speed records.
Big everything.
That's Car Guy. That's fantastic. Love that. Yeah. That's lifeblood for the entire scene. They are heavy AF and do not have any track capability at all. Ridiculously expensive. And I don't think they're that good looking.
No, I'm not a huge fan of them for anything except the numbers. And to be fair, that's what they strive for in the engineering department, but then everything else about the car I just kind of don't care about.
Right. So in that respect, I'm tempted to put them pretty high up. I will just say, I think breaking production speed records is kind of getting old. I mean, Jaguar held that title at one point. Hennessy has held that title and claimed that they're production cars when they're not.
Also, I think if you look at other like hypercar brands, Bugatti hasn't changed as much, as quickly, or as transformatively as anyone else.
Yeah,
I don't know if Koenigsegg is on this list.
I think so. In my opinion, Bugatti is kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
And I know this is a super hot take to associate great value and Bugatti in the same sentence, but I actually think this is the supercar you buy if you know nothing about supercars.
That's fair. Yeah, it's just I've got unlimited money and I want a car that I know goes fast and I know that people will like and that it'll be a status symbol. But it's not really an enthusiast car, and maybe that's because it's expensive.
No, and nobody that buys this is actually going to be able to take advantage of its production world record, speed. So it doesn't matter.
Peugeot.
That's going right next to Citroen.
Actually, no, this is not Peugeot. We already did Peugeot. This is.
Oh, is that Holden?
Is it Holden? It is Holden. Yes. Holden is.
The top is cut off. Give us some.
Holden is Australia, the brand.
Okay, so this is just GM overseas. That being said, if you go to Australia, Holden v Ford is like a absolute blood battle.
So because we have slightly more connection to these than we do things like Citroen or Peugeot, do we actually throw it into one of these categories, or do we?
No, I think it's sorry Australia, that's going at the strong independent just because it's basically GM.
I'm about it. Toyota, maybe the most reliable, solid, most successful auto brands of all time.
Okay, so I think if Honda is at the top,
Honda's at the top,
it's
Toyota's
hard
at the top.
To make a case why Toyota doesn't deserve it.
Fully agree. So here's the thing: Toyota doesn't make any like hardcore enthusiast cars in the way that people think they do, in my opinion. Just like when I think of the Supra, modern Supra aside, that's a BMW. The 90 Supra that everybody loves. It's all about the drivetrain and its power capabilities, and I don't ever think of Toyota and like suspension dynamics, or like handling capabilities in the way that I do with like BMW.
So I think you were a little too trigger happy with Paul Walker's Garage on Toyota, though, for two specific reasons. Toyota does not genuinely make a supercar or like a very high performance car right now. You can say some of the stuff that Lexus does, but we've already put them in a lower tier for that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to grade them separately, but also you can't. Anything positive we say about Lexus has to be also said about Toyota.
Because we're doing them separately, I can't bring in stuff like the LFA for Toyota, right? Now that being said, the Supra, possibly one of the most iconic, enthusiast cars of all time.
The 2JZ is arguably the most capable engine ever.
Right, exactly. The two cars that I currently would give Toyota the most credit for, one being the new Supra, the second being the FT86.
GT86.
They had to go to GT86, sorry. They had to go to Subaru for developing the FRS and the BRZ is what we know it as here. And then they had to go to BMW to make the Supra. So I don't think they can truly make it to the top.
Okay, but my counter argument to pull them back up into Paul Walker's Garage in the Sky is not just drivetrain reliability, but also like if you look at the Toyota Hilux or what the Tacoma became, it's an indestructible vehicle.
Right. I mean, as far as reliability, there's no one on this list that deserves to be above them. But in terms of performance, I don't think I can
But I think this is one brand where we can kind of remove our biases towards performance aside, because you have to just not only in a track sense, but in like a engineering sense. They have some of the best performing units for whatever they do.
I think that's fair. I think it's debatable. I'm just going to end it with I take a Honda over the Toyota every day.
I never would. Never would. As the person with the mouse, I'm leaving them in Paul Walker's Garage.
Where's your Type R equivalent in Toyota? Where's your NSX equivalent in Toyota?
They're in Lexus.
Are they, though?
All right, we'll leave them in Brent Rambo because we threw
No, you can put them other. You can put them other. That's fine.
Good. Then
but one of those Japanese manufacturers has to come out.
Okay, Dodge without Ram. The Challenger, they're boats.
Okay.
They're good boats, but
I am not even going to pretend to defend Dodge in terms of performance and reliability.
I don't care about Dodge.
But I just want to give them a shout out. this is the only manufacturer that is willing to give a giant middle finger to the economy-focused car, business that we know today.
I mean, these days
they
they're-
literally sell cars just by putting more horsepower in them. No one else is making 700 and something horsepower Demons and Hellcats and Trackhawks and whatever else.
These days, they're like an engine builder. They make an awesome engine and they just put it in whatever chassis gets thrown at them.
They are the most American attitude.
I just
thing
can't
on-
think of any scenario where I would want a Dodge as my first or even second choice.
That's true. Now
GT car, Challenger's great, Charger's great, but there are other better choices.
I have to say, I love the Viper. The Viper deserves a conversation in any American car manufacturer
that's right.
comparison.
And only
there's no more
because-
Vipers, so whatever.
Yeah, but also only because Viper's not separated on this list in the same way Corvette is. We have to kind of give them the Corvette treatment and bump them up one tier for that.
Right.
So, I mean, great value. They're kind of in the middle for me.
I think I'm going to say great value only because they have no answer to the current stuff that Ford and GM are doing, and if you're an American car manufacturer, you have to stay locked in with that kind of back and forth. They're making ridiculously high horsepower cars, and I love them for that, but I would never buy any of them.
Yep. Abarth goes right there next to Fiat. They're the same. Hummer. Okay.
Strong independent brand that don't need no funding. Literally, it doesn't make them anymore.
Yes, but also they're bad.
Okay.
The Hummer street cars, not military Humvees.
I'll do a quick history of Hummer. There are people that would argue this deserves the top spot because this is literally a military grade vehicle that crossed over.
But
into
as a street brand,
then there's things like the H3, which is literally
one
like
of the
a baby
worst
Tahoe.
vehicles
Which why would you buy
of
this?
all
And then they're also like non-existence anymore. I think they deserve strong independent brand just because this is another GM relic that doesn't it's not around. Some Hummers are good, some Hummers are trash. I don't really know where they deserve to be, but because they don't exist, I would say put them at the bottom.
I mean, aside, not just because they're defunct, but just because of what they
Bro,
were.
an H1 is literally running over the Jeep that you decided to put in the great value brand. So I think it deserves the bottom.
We'll leave Hummer by itself because it's just too
strong independent brand that don't need no man.
Eagle.
Strong independent brand that don't need no
Sure,
man.
that's fine.
No, I mean they're fine, but they don't deserve a conversation with the rest of these.
Yeah, not by themselves. Pagani, art on wheels. But also that's the one. So as a person that always preaches drive your car, don't let it sit in a museum, blah blah blah. The Pagani's the one car where I'd be like, hold on, don't break it.
I'm tempted to almost relegate this to strong independent brand.
I almost am as well.
Just because this is the Italian thing. The cars are insane from performance and enthusiasts. They're literally just car porn.
For cool factor, as a kid, the Zonda was.
But they're not genuinely competing with Lamborghini and Ferrari.
They're not.
Porsche.
And not even really competing with Koenigsegg or Bugatti. Because they are more for the appreciation of it rather than the performance of it.
They are sick, but they're not at the same level as these other manufacturers.
Ariel sits right here next to BAC. They're the same thing. Mini is the bad version of BMW, but it actually has kind of a pedigree for one fun car. But I just don't really like any of the stuff they make now. What is the new Mini?
Okay.
GP?
BMW aside, I know I'm gonna eat my own words on this one because I shelled out for BMW. I think this might be one. They have enough of a cult following. The original Mini is nothing compares to the original Mini.
Right, but that's again, that's a single car that brings the whole brand up a lot, but then everything else is yikes.
Well, they don't really. I mean, Minis are Minis. They don't really make anything that different until today, which is just variants of the Mini.
That's fair.
So I want to put them at the top. I agree. The current, if you bought a 2020 Mini, you're not buying anything close to what you could have gotten.
I say we
in the day.
I say we land in Brent Rambo territory then, because the one iconic OG Mini would probably end up in.
Yeah, I mean, I think brand loyalty aside, if you're a car enthusiast, you have to appreciate Mini.
That's fair. Opel, the Speedster, really cool.
This is more GM stuff that.
Yeah, but it's not old.
They're sick,
stuff.
but they're a one-trick pony. They deserve strong independent brand, even though they're not.
Yeah, but they're not the same as Oldsmobile Plymouth Mercury, where they're just kind of old defunct things. They are, but they're also They have some.
They're old and defunct in a different way. No, I mean they're cool. They're awesome. I'd love to own a Speedster, but they're not
they
a
do
serious
kind of-
contender
they do
for the
kind
stuff
of
on the
sit
list.
alone. Subaru.
Okay.
It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. The WRX is good. That's the only Subaru I even remotely care about.
See, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna have a hard time putting this somewhere different than Nissan.
Interesting. Okay. Fuji Heavy Industries runs deep.
I personally do not like Subarus, and I definitely don't like Subaru people. But as far as pedigree, cult following, there is no Lancer anymore.
Okay, I agree, but then I think that immediately puts them exactly at Nissan -1 because they have no GTR and they have no. You could say they have a Z, like the WRX or whatever is the cult following, super loyalist car. But what under a Subaru badge is anywhere near the performance of like. Pick your car
So
and
here's
buy
okay.
these
Here's
other
hear me out.
brands.
Here's my argument for this one. The GTR, yes, head and shoulders above anything that Subaru or Mitsubishi or the other Japanese
Yep.
manufacturer make for that point. However, all Subarus averaged together are definitely scoring
That's
higher
true.
than all Nissans averaged together.
Your sort of average econo Subaru is definitely better than your average econo Nissan.
I'm kind of saying, as someone that's in, if you were in the market for a Subaru-like car, you almost can't go like. There's not anything that they make that you can
Yeah.
arguably say is like just absolute terrible trash.
Just as a dependable vehicle, I need to recommend something like you'd
Right.
probably go WRX.
So
Brent Rambo with these other guys, that's probably
I'm gonna say the only reason I wouldn't put this in Paul Walker's garage, and yes, I'm hanging my hat a lot on the cult following in STI,
that is
because Paul Walker drove an Evo, so they're gonna have to go. They're gonna have to go in Brent Rambo.
well, you can't tell me that we're gonna get to Mitsubishi and put them up.
Oh, I can and I will, but we're not there yet.
Oh no! Oh no! Land Rover is the bad half of Jaguar. Actually, no, I don't know. I really like Land Rovers.
I like Land Rover too. Obvious status symbol, serious off-road capability. If you're just talking SUVs,
Yep.
it's not really hard to talk about.
But I don't think they sit at the top tier. I think we just leave them at great. They're great, but they have a ton of reliability
Yeah,
issues.
I can't put them in Paul Walker's garage in the sky.
Yeah.
I also can't say they're great value brand just because they kind of are the status
Yeah,
quo. When
except
it comes to
I'm
what
over
they're
here on
trying
Facebook Marketplace looking for $3,500 Range Rovers.
No,
that
they
might
definitely have the
actually
cult
come.
following. They're definitely enthusiast cars.
Yeah.
The new Range Rovers are amazing looking cars.
Yeah.
They're sick, so I think they're Brent Rambo.
We all know where McLaren goes, right? Because if you have a dream garage and there's not a McLaren F1 in it, then what is your garage?
I think,
Even
yeah,
the 720S, arguably the best.
my
modern
rationale
vehicle.
for this is, and I know this is a hot take, but between what I would consider the big three supercars, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and McLaren, I take the McLaren 10 out of 10
I
times.
think for me, it's tough because I'm gonna praise Lamborghini a lot when we get to Lamborghini, but I have to agree. I mean,
Yeah, and as far as racing pedigree, they're doing it as good as anyone else in this list. Maybe not currently, but
absolutely, yeah. But I mean, if we want to talk about F1, they're doing as well as anyone behind Mercedes could hope for at this point, with given the drivers and tech available to them. I mean, it's definitely not their heyday. Saab, I kind of want to put them in independent.
frozen European car that somehow ends up in GM's hands. That's cool, but
Yeah.
I think it's strong independent
I
brand.
think we'll just leave it as a bit relevant for now. Lamborghini is maybe my favorite manufacturer in history. I mean,
Okay.
of the last 10 years, the Huracan Performante is like money no object, almost guaranteed the car I would buy. I would almost prefer it to any hypercar, especially if you have to consider price. Their history, their start by rivaling Ferrari, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of any Lamborghini that's not good. And most of them are, in fact, like great or the best.
Okay, so I will say, as far as performance, yes, everyone knows about Lamborghini. They're an all-out performance car. They have no racing pedigree. Their company founding is based in the fact that they don't want to go racing as much as Enzo does. Now, that being said, we put other stuff up there that isn't a race fanatic.
They're kind of in the GT3 stuff now with the Huracan.
Yes,
but it's sort of
that's
their own
not what
series.
they're known for. That's not
No,
their cult
that's
following.
for sure.
Now, I will say, just like I said, I take the McLaren over Lamborghini and Ferrari 10 out of 10 times. I probably take the Lamborghini 10 out of 10 times against the Ferrari.
Oh, 11 out of 10 times. Yeah, 100%.
These are literally like the bedroom poster car, like the dramatization, the looks, the feel. You know, it's just they are Lamborghini, like only Lamborghini can do.
Right.
So I think they probably deserve Paul Walker's garage.
I mean,
in the sky.
I think the hardest decision I can make on this list is deciding between Lamborghini and McLaren. But because they're so close, you have to put them in the same team.
Yeah, I actually think they're both supercars and only supercars, but they're famous and well known for two very different reasons.
Yeah. Bentley is kind of like Rolls-Royce, but not quite. So I kind of want to just slap them in Brent Rambo and leave it there.
I do like Bentley, but if you're talking about Bentley, you almost assuredly know about Rolls-Royce. And if you're talking about Rolls-Royce, you don't necessarily know anything about Bentley. So I think they deserve one tier down.
Okay, Koenigsegg is small enough that I would almost put them in strong independent manufacturer just by definition, but they're so well known, especially among enthusiasts, but actually even among normal people as well because of like the Fast and Furious movies. And
That's
Top
true.
Gear.
I think Koenigsegg's are sick. I can't see why I would put Pagani in the bottom and not Koenigsegg. They're basically the same thing. Koenigsegg's just doing it slightly better.
I mean, I don't know if that's true though, because I think as a manufacturer, as like an engineering firm, Koenigsegg is one of the most innovative places on the planet from an engineering standpoint.
So I admit I'm not like deep in the skunk works of Koenigsegg. I don't know that there's any R&D they're doing that the likes of Ferrari, Porsche are not.
I think there certainly is, and I think maybe you just don't know about it, and maybe I am not.
So what? What cars?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know if I can pull it out of my head.
Okay, well, you're not putting them in the top if you can't name at least one car that is somehow a technological breakthrough for Koenigsegg.
Okay, well, we'll argue about this after and clip it in, but I'll leave it in Brent Rambo for now. But I feel
no,
like...
I'm not saying they're bad. I think they just possibly deserve strong independent manufacturer that don't need no.
Okay, moving on to Lincoln. What I mean, it's Lincoln. It's like
this is Ford's Cadillac.
It's Buick. It's Cadillac.
I don't know. I'm tempted to say great value brand just because I don't think you really buy a Lincoln.
It's a car.
You could also get like a Cadillac or a BMW or a Mercedes. Yeah. They do have some iconic stuff back in the day. The OG Lincoln Continentals, the Navigator. But, I mean, they're not necessarily unreliable or bad.
Yeah, I don't think that's the thing. I have nothing bad or good to say about them, so I think slapping them right in the middle is
Yeah,
cool.
I think that's fair.
Chrysler as a single standalone brand, not
okay. So this is one of the big three. Technically, right now today, this is one of the big three. This is the, Daimler. For those of you who have ever heard that, it was Ford, it was GM, and then it was Chrysler. So I don't know. We already rated Dodge and Ram, which are like two of their most relevant products today.
That's what I'm saying. If we're separating them, Chrysler gets way down on the list for me.
I actually, though, I will say modern Chrysler is not bad. They have the 300. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't think of anything that rustles my jimmies like the hotted up stuff that comes out of like Cadillac and Ford.
Yeah,
so.
and for me, like, if I just want an average A to B car, there's a lot of things I'm picking before a Chrysler.
True.
So
Yeah,
I think
that's
sit down
fair.
here with. I would certainly go shop for a Hyundai before I go shop for a Chrysler. Smart.
Okay, this is independent. This is the definition. This is a Mercedes that is trying to fill a very specific niche.
Right.
The great cars may be terrible. I don't know. I don't care.
Who cares?
They deserve strong independent.
They can park everywhere. Cadillac, separating them out like we did with Lincoln, they're kind of killing it.
Okay, so I think this is the American allegory to Toyota Lexus.
Yeah.
But I think Cadillac is doing it way better than Lexus does it.
I think we have to put them solidly in there because there's nothing special that sets them out for like our Paul Walker's Garage tier, but everything they do is like really solid.
Yeah,
really
I mean
good.
the V car, like the original CTS-V, the current CTS-V, the ATS, the ATS-V, those are all
It's not
sick cars.
It's not a money no object dream garage car, but for everything else, there's Cadillac.
I mean, I think they are the budget German fast saloon, and you can't go wrong with buying one.
Scion, goodbye Scion, defunct.
But it only exists in the U.S. and it's just Toyotas that have a different badge.
Okay,
There's no
if we're
difference
gonna-
between them.
That's right. That's Aston Martin.
Okay,
One of the
this
most iconic
may deserve
brands.
Paul Walker's Garage.
Not just may, like it has to. For any reason you would include Jaguar, you have to also include Aston Martin. Like design,
Yeah,
Not only like performance, sound, like luxuriousness, but also iconic emblem of like James Bond and.
I think Aston Martin has genuinely made some of the best looking cars ever made, and they've made many of them.
And hot take, they still do. I love the new big grill thing they've got going on that everyone seems to hate.
Not reliable, very overpriced, don't have a lot of track pedigree. I mean, their OG actual like racing endeavors are amazing, but their current cars are like, what are you doing?
From like just brand stuff that's not related to the car's performance or quality itself, I mean, they're top tier.
I'd like to believe Paul Walker has a DB5, so...
For sure. Okay, Saturn. Saturn is, they had the sky was a little bit redeeming, but they're pretty bad otherwise. I think of Saturn, whenever I think of Saturn, I think of the...
I think this is solidly runs and drives, just because, one, they don't exist, two, they did have some cool cars, like the Sky, that was pretty cool, but that was also just like the Kappa platform, which was also a Pontiac, which we're about to get to.
Right, so here's the thing. Pontiac and Saturn are almost exactly the same.
Okay, no. See, wherever Saturn goes, Pontiac has to go higher.
I think +1.
Because we have the GTO.
I think Pontiac is Saturn +1, basically.
Yeah. Pontiac definitely made some trash. #Aztec. They also made some of the most iconic muscle cars of all time. They also made the Solstice, and then they went, by the wayside.
Suzuki. Suzuki's a bit of a weird one. They don't have a whole lot going on these days, but they're not defunct.
Performance-wise, you don't pick Suzuki.
They
are pretty reliable,
but they're not your choice for reliability either. So, like, if you look at the average reliable car,
but what
Suzuki's below
what I think Suzuki, I think it's probably fair to say Suzuki is trying to do what Hyundai and Kia do by undercut Japanese engineering and price, but Suzuki was Japanese.
Right.
So... I want
to give this a runs and drives, to be honest.
That's fair. They're reliable. They're kind of off the wall, but cult following and like amazing pedigree, not really.
No, and I think they just, in terms of if you're looking for an average car, you probably look for a lot of other things before you look for a Suzuki. Now Mitsubishi's our last one, which is
Paul Walker drove an Evo.
The Evo, as much as you love it, as much as Paul Walker drove one, is literally the budget GTR. He drives it because he didn't get his GTR yet.
Yeah, it's a budget GTR, but it's also less than half the price of a GTR.
It's also less than half.
You can YouTube all day the people that are building GTR killers for less than a GTR.
I can't support it going above Nissan, but I will allow you to put it in the same tier.
Okay, I mean, Mitsubishi does make some trash, but they are extremely reliable. I would argue their like actual quality of car is better than the average Nissan fleet.
They had a ton of failings as a business, but that's not necessarily a fault of their engineering.
Also, they don't make the Evo anymore, so R.I.P. Evo, R.I.P. Paul Walker.
Yeah, they hardly make anything anymore. They almost went completely out of business. I think we need to end on something a little spicier than a debate about Mitsubishi. So what do you think?
Well, first, something that's interesting when we're looking at the board right now.
It's pretty top-heavy.
Apparently, we put all the best cars in the strong independent manufacturer that don't need no man. I mean, a lot of these are great, but I mean,
that's the thing is, I think the problem with this concept of a tier list is that there's too many rubrics we can use.
That's fair. So I actually think I'm pretty happy with most of what I see. I'm gonna stand by Toyota and Honda do not both deserve to be in Paul Walker's garage, and I think
we take Honda out, right?
No, we don't.
All right, we can continue, but I think if we had to pick one brand to stand above them all, based on our comments as we discussed each of these, I feel like we were gonna kind of end up at like Lotus or McLaren. If there could only ever be one car in the world, maybe you pick the McLaren F1, maybe you pick Lotus and all of its lightweight glory.
I mean, I don't know. I think if I set objectivity aside and I was just to go off what do I truly want out of any of these, I'm probably, I hate to say it, I'm looking more at Ford BMW than I am at anyone else in this list. In terms of all around test of time great cars. Not that McLaren doesn't deserve that, not that Lotus doesn't deserve that, but those are a little too niche for me to go out and tell the entire world this is the end-all be-all of auto manufacturing, because they're quite clearly track cars.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking multiple rubrics. I feel like if you wanted to say best-looking car of all time, you probably immediately go to an Aston Martin or something.
I think the list is fair in the sense that best luxury car of all time, Rolls-Royce, it's in the top tier.
Yeah, best
truck of all time, Dodge Rams, they're top tier.
Best track weapon of all time. Like it's Lotus. Best
current
of all time.
supercars. I think
McLaren's the
McLaren's
Lambos for
definitely
sure.
packing some punches. I still come back to I can't keep Toyota and Honda next to each other.
I think we should keep them there, and I think we just call that a factor of this is a 5-category list, and we can't. There's no nuance between the two. If you wanted to go more, if you want to lean in the direction of enthusiast spec, then we probably pull Toyota down.
Yeah, I mean, okay, right now today I would buy a car. I can honestly say I would buy a car from every one of these guys except Toyota. There's no way I buy a Supra over something that BMW makes.
That's fair. Yeah, from like a what am I going to buy as an enthusiast point, you wouldn't put Toyota at the top now. I would also not put Honda and Acura up there either, but in their relative price range and competition, they are the best.
Ooh, see, I don't know that anyone competes with the Type R in terms of performance and like trackability in that market.
What about like your Focus RS?
So
Similar
the only
price,
reason that I would knock the RS is one, not a knock. It's just that Ford does better things than the RS. Two, they don't make the RS. So the Honda currently today, there is a 2021 Type R.
I think we got to call it there. I don't think we can sit here and pick best manufacturer of all time without going through specific categories for why.
I mean, it's definitely BMW, so it's fine. We can just end it there. BMW.
Oops. Ended the video.
You can buy one car, money no object, but it's the only car you can have in your garage, and it cannot be something you've previously currently owned.
I would probably buy a Lamborghini or a McLaren and then just like rent whatever utilitarian stuff I needed. I think if I won the lottery right now, the very first thing I would go buy is like some form of Huracan.
For me, it would definitely be Corvette, but Corvette's one didn't make it into the top tier, and two I already had on. I think I would probably have to be right there with you in terms of maybe the Huracan if I'm only going to have one car.
Yep.
But if I got to be honest, if I'm only going to have one car, I'm looking more like M4, M5 territory.
Okay.
Just because that car literally does anything that any normal car can do, and you can still take to the track and have fun all day.
That's true. I think I would be more on the spectrum of sacrifice.
Okay, so if there's a manufacturer that you think wasn't given its fair due or you didn't see on the list, let us know in the comments below.
Yep. Yeah, so like and subscribe if you agree with us or if you would like a closer connection to argue with us.